This is the Birth, Baby, and Life podcast with Kristen Burgess, and we're talking about breastfeeding and newborns with neurodivergent moms in episode number 210. Hey mama, it is Kristen and I am super excited to be here today continuing our series on neurodivergent moms and the pregnancy, birth, breastfeeding, mothering experience that we have therein. If you don't know me, again, my name is Kristen. I am a pregnancy coach. I work with mamas all over the world, helping them to enjoy a great pregnancy, grow a healthy baby, and prepare for a beautiful birth. I also work with mamas who are trying to calm the chaos at home so that they have a happy home full of healthy and happy kiddos. Again, today we are continuing this series and we are on part 3 of the series. We are going to be talking about breastfeeding and kind of early months newborn mothering, that 4th trimester, and how that might feel as a mom who is neurodivergent. Like I've said in the previous 2 episodes, a lot of what I talk about in this episode is applicable to all moms. So even if you are not on the spectrum somewhere, it may be helpful for you to listen into this episode. So again, autistic moms, may be especially nervous because when we think about taking care of babies, you think about a lot of physical contact. We need to hold babies. We think of a lot of sensory things like crying babies, handling babies' needs, babies spit up, all that kind of stuff. And it's just a lot of interaction with another human being, which may be something that you throughout your life have found a little bit awkward. I want to encourage you right off the bat that those feelings and worries are all normal. And I also want to give you an encouragement or maybe a hope that you can, in fact, be a great mom to your baby, even if you are on the spectrum or have an autism diagnosis. I'm going to talk a lot about this, but one thing that I want to point out to begin with is that I think that autistic moms may even have a strength because some of the same things that soothe the autistic nervous system, such as routines, sameness, calm environments, those sorts of things are the things that babies and little children thrive on as well. So you may even have a bit of an advantage because some of the things that I suggest may feel really intuitive. Now, let's talk about breastfeeding. As I mentioned on the last couple of weeks' episodes, the research on breastfeeding and moms on the spectrum there's not a great volume of research. However, the research that is out there is very encouraging as far as the ability for autistic moms to have success breastfeeding their babies. Some moms do talk about the feeling as being weird. One study, I'll see if I can find this study and I will include it in the show notes below. But there was one study where one of the moms said that when the baby nursed, she kind of got this sensation like the rattling of an old-timey phone ringing. And I'm not sure if she was talking about like just because we have cell phones now with all kinds of ringtones on them. Or if she was talking about the kind of phones that we would have had when we were kids that are just ring, or if she's talking about like really old kind of rotary style phones. I think that's what she was talking about, was like that kind of ratcheting that goes with the sound of a rotary phone. And for some reason, she really correlated breastfeeding with that. But most of the moms who were studied in the research on breastfeeding did not have a problem with breastfeeding, or they didn't find it to be really uncomfortable, or they had what would be considered normal discomforts that many moms experience when they're learning about breastfeeding their babies. And that's another thing, is remember, you and your baby are learning to breastfeed together. And even if you've breastfed another child, this new baby has never breastfed before. So there may be some work going on into that. Just breastfeeding is a learned art. We used to have the womanly art of breastfeeding from La Leche League, but now they've changed it to the art of breastfeeding. And I talked about that in another episode, but yeah, it's something that it's okay if it doesn't feel super intuitive at first. It's something that it's okay if it takes time to work on for you. And it's also okay if for you it can feel overwhelming at times. I found that for me, the times when breastfeeding felt overwhelming was with my first baby, when I was first getting started with breastfeeding and I wasn't sure if everything was right. And I was wondering, like I tuned in a hyper way to every single noise that she made. Is this normal? And I think this could have been interpreted as a mom who had some postpartum anxiety going on, but I actually think it was because I'm on the spectrum. And so I had read all of the book knowledge about breastfeeding, including common problems and troubleshooting and that sort of thing. And so my brain just like hyper fixated on every noise. Like, is that a click that she's not supposed to make? That means that she didn't have a good latch. And is she supposed to make this noise? And is she supposed to do that? And is she supposed to do the other thing? And I think it was much less an anxiety thing, because I don't think that I had any sort of anxiety or depression or anything. In fact, like I've mentioned before, I found being pregnant and birthing to be one of the most empowering experiences of my life. And I found mothering to just be a joy, even though there's definitely times when mothering is challenging. But especially, I have always loved caring for babies. I just love it. And so I liked it from my very first. But there was just this like hyper, especially around nursing. Like, is all of this supposed to be happening? Am I getting everything right? Am I doing everything right? On a level that perhaps there wasn't there for other mothering issues. And I think that was a part of just me being on the spectrum and having this volume of book knowledge, but then needing to put it into the practical knowledge of actually breastfeeding a baby. So if you notice some of those things or some of those anxieties and things coming up, know that those are normal challenges that all moms face, and especially finding that you're kind of trying to hyperanalyze things could be a sign of being on the spectrum. And so it's not a bad thing, but I do think that it's something that it's good to have support with. Because if you have somebody else validating that, okay, there's a good latch, or oh, let's actually do this to improve the latch, it can really be helpful. So for so many things, like I've mentioned before, having a support system can be really helpful. And having a support system can be helpful with breastfeeding. And I started this little bit off with talking about breastfeeding being overwhelming. And I think, again, most of the time when moms on the spectrum find breastfeeding overwhelming, it's not when everything is going quote unquote smoothly, because at least the research seems to show that most moms don't have problems with the physical sensation of nursing itself, because it feels like it's A, important, and B, the baby is kind of an extension of them, and this is an extension of the pregnancy and birthing process. But moms can easily get overwhelmed when things don't seem to be going well, and you're wondering about everything. You're wondering about baby's latch. You're wondering about baby's weight gain, and then you get overwhelmed, or if you feel like you're having a hard time getting baby to get latched on, it can feel very, very, very overwhelming. And that is when it is okay to take a break, to set baby aside for a minute. I can remember a time with my second baby and he was just a fussy guy overall. But he was really, really fussy, and I felt like, I couldn't get him to latch on. I couldn't get him to calm down. I couldn't do anything, and this was late. I think it was in the middle of the night. And my mother-in-law was staying with us, or staying with me, because it was just me and him and my oldest child. And so she was there to be the other person with us. And she came and offered to take him, and I felt rotten about it, because I'm like, gosh, I'm supposed to be holding. And he was, this was within his first week or two. He was this newborn, but I was so tired and so frustrated and so overwhelmed. And she took him, and I ended up falling asleep, and she just kind of rocked him. She got him to stop crying and go to sleep. And then she brought him back to me a little bit later, because I woke up, and I think I called out to her. And he latched right on, and both of us went to sleep again. I think that both of us were just overwhelmed and upset. And she wasn't mean about it. She didn't imply that I wasn't okay. And I think sometimes there's a balance, because sometimes people will try and swoop the baby away from you constantly. Oh, you need your rest, more because they want to cuddle the baby than they want to help you. But in this instance, I really was overwhelmed and having a difficult time. And having her take him and walk him for that little bit, or rock him, I think, like I said, she ended up in the rocker outside my bedroom. But that was really helpful. And so it's okay if you need a minute. It's okay if you need to set the baby down in a safe space, go to the bathroom, take a minute to breathe. Those sorts of things are okay if you feel overwhelmed. It's okay to get help from a lactation consultant or a breastfeeding counselor. Those things are okay to do. And taking that break when you feel overwhelmed or touched out can be really helpful. There can be times when babies can be fussy and they want to nurse a whole lot. And you can feel really touched out and overwhelmed, and asking somebody just to hold the baby for a little bit. I personally never made the choice to have somebody else offer a bottle. I wanted to exclusively breastfeed my babies, and that's what I did until baby started solid food. I think that I usually found a nice balance, because I did use elimination communication with my baby. So it's like, well, if you want to hold the baby, you can potty the baby. And that's that. I'll link to elimination communication resources below, but that's a whole nother rabbit hole that we won't go in on this podcast. But it's like, if you want to help with the babies, there's diapers, there's elimination communication, there's walking while I take a shower, there's cuddling in bed while, we just have family time. There's lots of ways to do that. So I never asked for somebody to handle a feeding so that I didn't have to handle it. But definitely, if there's times that baby's fussy in the evenings, having somebody else walk back and forth with baby for a bit and just giving you a rest and some time to decompress can be really helpful. This is a place that a postpartum doula can be helpful too. And sometimes the overwhelm of breastfeeding and all that new baby stuff can be reduced because you have people handle everything else. So somebody else is worrying about the meals, somebody else is cleaning the house, somebody else is doing the majority of running around with older children. So maybe they come in to visit here and there, and then somebody else is managing it, because that means you don't have to be trying to worry about all of this other stuff on top of time with your newborn. And just like with everything we talked about in last week's episode on your birthing time, these are good things to think about. In fact, when women come into my program and I work with them one-on-one, we have 3 focuses. One is pregnancy, one is birth preparation, and one is postpartum preparation, because the transition is so important. If you want your pregnancy and birth and mothering to be a transformative and positive experience for you, you want to prepare for all of that. So thinking through these things beforehand can really help. And knowing that a lot of the overwhelm may come not from the physical act of breastfeeding, but instead just from the overwhelm, from difficulties, or from those times like when baby is fussy and maybe cluster feeding, there may be a growth spurt, and knowing what are other things that I can do to get some relief in that time. Even if I'm committed to being the one who nurses the baby, there's definitely going to be times even between those feedings when maybe daddy can walk the baby or grandma can rock the baby or that kind of thing, or you can just set the baby down. One of the things that I want to say is it can be difficult, and I'll come back to this in a minute, but it is okay to set an upset baby down in a safe place and go somewhere else. That is okay. Now, of course, we don't want to neglect or leave our babies, but in the moment, if that baby is crying and you are overwhelmed, it is far better to set baby in a pack and play or in a blanket on the floor in a safe room, and go take a minute to step somewhere else. Go to the bathroom. Take a minute to step outside. Call somebody and talk to somebody. Those or text. There's so many text lines now. Postpartum International, I'll link to them in the show notes below, has a text line that you can text and get a response from somebody and just say, I'm overwhelmed, my baby won't stop crying, what do I do? I'm there for clients throughout the 4th trimester if they need to call and talk to me. So, it's okay to reach out for help. It's okay to take that moment. But again, coming back to breastfeeding, just know that sometimes it's those challenging situations that are overwhelming, and they can be overwhelming for any mom. And looking for ways, how can I proactively handle the challenge, will help you continue the breastfeeding relationship with your baby. You may also find that certain positions work better for you and certain clothing works better for you. So those are really things to consider when you're nursing your baby. Some positions that can help, like sometimes the cradling hold is difficult or doesn't feel intuitive at first. It can be challenging for moms to get started with breastfeeding. As your baby gets bigger, that position tends to be pretty easy and can become a go-to. But at first, it can be difficult, and especially if you need to rest, it's not the best position. So a sideline position can be really good. And sometimes if you're feeling overstimulated, like in those fussy times with baby, a sideline position can be nice because there's a little bit more space between you and baby. Baby, of course, still latched on, but there's some more space, or you can have a blanket wrapped around baby and something wrapped around you. So there's just not quite as much contact, yet you're still able to have baby tucked in and taken care of. And then also a laid back breastfeeding position can sometimes be really helpful. Biological nurturing. I talk about this a lot in my breastfeeding class, which I'll link to. But that biological nurturing can be a really good thing because it's just not a position that feels quite as contrived. It's a position that can feel more natural. I'm leaning back because it's literally a leaning back position. And the baby is fully on your body in that position. But for me, somehow it felt actually good because instead of me kind of trying to hold the baby up or having the boppy or the nursing pillow holding the baby up, baby's body is kind of resting on yours, and that weight felt really good to me. So, we mentioned a weighted blanket at some point in the last episode. And so sometimes the baby's weight itself can feel really soothing for you because a lot of moms on the spectrum like that pressure feeling on them, that solid pressure. And so you've got baby's weight on you. So that might be a position that works better. The football hold could be another position because, again, baby's kind of tucked under your arm and it's a little bit more of a relaxed position than that cradle hold. One of the things that we know about breastfeeding positions, because you have all these official breastfeeding positions, and many of them were developed from kind of this bottle feeding mentality, right? And so when we look at what are ways that moms breastfeed more naturally, those may be some of the positions that you want to look at. And those may relieve a lot of the discomfort. And again, if it's just overwhelming in the skin, or maybe everybody's sweaty and has been crying, and sometimes a swaddle can really help calm baby down, and it can help calm you down because baby's like a nice, neat little burrito package and easier to manipulate, so to speak, as you're trying to get breastfeeding going. So those are things to think about. And like I mentioned, what you wear when you're breastfeeding can really matter. So choose clothing, and you may have to experiment for a bit. There's ways to, you can just wear a big t-shirt when you're around the house, if that works, and nurse baby. And that's what I did for my first few days postpartum, was just have a really soft, nice t-shirt. And I would have baby on one side, and then I would put like a pre-fold cloth diaper under the other side because it would leak. I never really liked nursing bras. I always wore like camisoles that had a nursing tank. And I also really could not stand the feel of breast pads in there. So I would usually, if I was at home, nurse with both sides open and just have a pre-fold diaper to catch the drips. And then your body eventually adjusts, so you have less drips on one side while the baby is nursing on the other than you may have in the early days. So that's another thing, is know that your body's going to adjust. There's going to be equilibrium. You're going to get things right. You're not always going to feel like this weird leaky person forever. But yeah, look at what works for you. Some moms really like the support of that nursing bra. Some moms prefer the camisole. Some moms go bra free. I definitely liked the little bit of support of the camisole. And another thing that I liked was it kept my midriff covered while baby was nursing. I had a girlfriend that always wore like a deep scoop neck top so that she could just push aside and nurse baby. And I always preferred to have something that pulled up. And I think some of that may have to do with breast size as well. I'm pretty small chested, even right after birth, when, usually your breasts are bigger right after birth. But, even then I was more small chested, so it made sense to pull things up. There are nursing clothes. I've had nursing tops here and there, but with my last few babies, I just tended to have the nursing camisole, which helped make basically any top into a nursing top. But spend some time looking at nursing clothing, looking at clothing options, considering what clothing makes you feel comfortable. And this actually makes me think I probably should have talked some about clothing in the birthing episode, which I didn't do. So my apologies there. But look at what clothing, and even in the pregnancy one, because again, I had weird pregnancy things. Like I could never stand these pregnancy things that brought the panel up over your belly. There was no way you were going to get me to wear something like that. So I had to find other clothes that accommodated a growing belly. So just consider your own sensory sensitivities, and that your sensitivities may not necessarily be related to your baby per se, but what you need to wear as a nursing mom, and look for things that are nice and soft and comfy, or textures and feelings that you like as a mom, because you can probably adapt most things that you wear to breastfeeding and find a nursing bra or a nursing tank or something that is that soft base layer that forms the foundation. And you may be able to find nursing clothes that work, or maybe not. There's just so much out there now. There's so much choice and option. And I would encourage you to look at that and consider that those things can really make a difference, especially for those sensitivity touch things that are going on. Yeah, and then if you need to pump because you're going to express milk for baby, or returning to work or something, definitely look into getting some guidance on using the pump so that you can make sure that pumping is a comfortable experience for you too. I found pumping to be more sensory difficult than nursing my baby, because even though I always nurse my babies, I would sometimes pump a little bit. I liked a manual pump better to take a little bit off, because in the early days my body always seemed to think it was nursing for twins, so just to soften itself up. But when I was nursing Phoenix, I actually did pump with an electric pump, pretty heavy duty, because I was pumping for another baby whose mom needed to be hospitalized, and so I was providing milk for that child. And I definitely found pumping to be challenging, but once I got the right size pump flange and knew, what to use as far as like lanolin or a lubricant or that kind of thing. It was much more comfortable, and I found it easier to pump and make sure that I was, getting a good amount out of the pump comfortably and keeping up with the milk I needed for Phoenix. And I just ended up with a lot of milk, especially once I stopped pumping for that baby. I had to kind of downgrade it a little bit, but it is something that you can adapt to. And one thing that's nice about pumping is that you can create routines with it, and you can create routines around nursing your baby too. So that might be something that's helpful for you. So let's shift from breastfeeding now and talk a little bit more about just creating kind of sensory friendly routines for taking care of your baby. So, and for yourself. So one of the things I mentioned at the beginning of the episode is that a lot of things that are soothing to the autistic nervous system are also soothing to the infant or newborn nervous system. And that's, having quiet, having calm, and babies and young children, and I think even older children as well, thrive on routines and predictability. And part of this, especially as they get older, might be because children don't have control of a lot of things. And so when they have routines, they have predictability, and it helps them feel more in control. But routines are actually soothing to babies. So in the first couple of weeks, you may not have as much of a routine with your little one, but I think that having some set standards for yourself is going to help, or some set guidelines for yourself. Maybe that's a little bit softer of a word to use. But for example, people will tell you to sleep when the baby sleeps. And as a mother of 8, I will tell you to sleep when the baby sleeps. If you find that you can't sleep because your mind is just ruminating and there's a lot of anxiety, that's when I want you to reach out to your midwife or to your care provider, because sleep is very, very important to regulating your nervous system and also to regulating your ability to handle everything that comes along with baby care. So you want to make sure that you sleep. And it's especially helpful, I think, to start guiding your baby towards good sleep habits right away. Maybe not in the first couple of nights, but certainly once you've settled in a little bit, I would definitely switch to, for example, do not turn all of the lights on at night if you need to change a diaper or if you need to nurse your baby. I would recommend a night light and keep things low-key and boring. And then during the day, you can be up and more active and there's more light, and your baby's body starts to adapt and adjust to this. And then another thing that I do, I have a handout for this in my baby sleep crib sheet, which I will link below. I'm going to have to make a long list of everything I'm linking below. But there's actually a little chart, and it's meant to be shaded in with a colored pencil. And you just shade in baby's wake periods and baby's sleep periods, and it's a week chart. And even if you think that your baby is all over the place with sleep and eating, and you could even use a third color for nursing periods, you will see after a week that even though there may be some slight varying day by day, babies tend to have a general pattern, and that will help you start to create a routine for yourself and your baby. And I do encourage some routines. Now, I've just created a handout. This is a handout that I'm going to share with clients, but I thought it was a really good idea. It's just a simple daily postpartum mood tracker for moms, but I included on it some small to-dos every day to just help create routines for moms. And it includes things like eat breakfast, eat lunch, sleep when the baby sleeps, start baby's nighttime routine, cuddle with baby. Those sorts of things are, they may seem obvious or self-explanatory, but any postpartum mom, neurodiverse or not, will tell you sometimes things are just chaos and you realize that you're not taking care of yourself in these basic things. And so having that checklist every day where you are doing these things and starting to create these small routines like, okay, baby usually seems to be asleep around 8 a.m. That's when I get up and grab myself a quick breakfast. And this goes back to what we talked about a couple weeks ago in the episode on pregnancy, is doing some thinking during pregnancy about what works for you with food and what's going to be nourishing for you, because you still need a lot of nourishing food and a lot of energy to breastfeed your baby. So thinking about quick, easy to grab meals, or this can be a great thing for daddy to do, like helping you get these meals together. That can be something that you really want to do or think through during pregnancy, so that postpartum you can create these routines where you're just able to quickly grab these things and take care of yourself while you take care of your baby's needs. But starting to develop small routines, even if they seem arbitrary, can really be helpful. And by arbitrary, I mean like even if it just serves you to get through a day because you don't have a boss to report to or you don't have to go anywhere. Creating these routines can help you and your baby. And like I said, if you look at that shaded chart, you may begin to see that your baby has more of a pattern than you thought, and you can kind of start to order routines around that natural pattern and encourage your baby to create more routines and set times from that pattern. And baby sleep in the 4th trimester is very interesting. I have an entire sleep class on this. It's more about how long your baby has been awake. So if you start to notice that your baby is fussy, or even you start to notice small signs of tiredness like, rubbing eyes or refusing to make eye contact or engage, that means it's time to put baby down. It's not really when does baby have set naps. It's when has baby been awake too long and need to go back to sleep. That's the key in that first or in that 4th trimester. Baby's sleep shifts much more to an adult-like pattern around the 4-month mark, and that's more when we have, set nap times and that sort of thing, and we're less looking at baby's sleep. Okay, so we've already talked some about environment, but I just want to touch on this again, that dim lights, that sort of thing can be really helpful for soothing a newborn and helping you keep baby calm, and that may also be very soothing for you. Another thing that can be really helpful that babies often like is white noise. If you think about it, when they're in the womb, they're constantly hearing all of the noises of your body, all the noises of your digestive system, your heart beating, your breathing and respiration. So they're used to this kind of sound of white noise all around them. And so white noise can be soothing to a baby. And white noise may also be soothing to your nervous system as an autistic or neurodivergent person. So it's okay to use those tools, that low lighting, that white noise, that sort of thing. It's all probably soothing to both baby and to you. And then the things that help calm your baby may also be calming to you. I mentioned swaddling. I used swaddling as a tool with many of my babies. Not all of them needed a lot of swaddling, but I would say that as the fussy ones especially, I used swaddling with. But swaddling can be really soothing. And then think about the things that we kind of intuitively or instinctively or even learned to think about. What soothes a baby? Well, we rock a baby that is fussing and crying, or we walk with the baby that's fussing and crying. So that movement, that motion can be really helpful. So think about this. The toolkit that you can use to soothe your baby is probably something that's going to be quite soothing to you. I highly recommend Dr. Harvey Karp's Happiest Baby on the Block. It's a book, but I actually recommend that you get the DVD. Many libraries have it. It's a little older at this point. I can't remember if it's streaming anywhere or not. I'll look and see if I can find for the show notes. But just seeing him demonstrate swaddling and then shushing, that's that white noise. And then babies like to suck. So sucking and then soothing and kind of just the different positions that he shows and the rocking that he shows. It's a great kind of crash course on how to soothe the fussy baby, but you'll notice that so many of the things are things that can be soothing to you from a sensory perspective as well. In fact, you could even swaddle up your baby and start rocking and shushing your baby while you have a weighted blanket over your lap so that you're getting your little bit of a swaddle too, and you're cuddled around your baby. So really, I think that a lot of what soothes babies is going to be helpful. One thing that you'll hear midwives suggest is, oh, well, you have this birth ball that you had from your birthing time, and now you can put that on there and bounce the baby. And this was with Corwin, my 6th baby, that he really loved. He continued to love bouncing even after, because he used like a little baby Johnny Jump Up bouncy seat, and I did use one of those, even though I know some people say don't use them for development. But when he was a little guy, we would sit and watch Star Trek Voyager, and I would bounce on the birth ball with him to get him to calm down because he was fussy. I would swaddle and bounce him, and it's so funny because the Voyager theme, because we're like binge watching the Voyager episodes, and so he would hear that theme music every night, and it got to the point where if he was fussy, if I just played the opening theme from Voyager, he would immediately calm down. So it was really funny, but it's interesting because, again, like I said, he continued to really like bouncing, and actually he's still my big trampoline bouncer as a kid. So I think that motion was just really soothing to his nervous system and his sensory system, but I think it really helped me calm down too. Because although I would say he was a pretty happy baby, he definitely had that witching hour crankiness. And so I would just sit and bounce him on the birth ball, and it would help calm both of us down. So many things that are soothing to fussy babies are also going to be soothing to you. And so that's why, again, I think there's some advantages there sometimes. A big part of managing the newborn period for any mom is having a strong postpartum support system. Like I said a minute ago, when women come through my program or working one-on-one, working on a postpartum plan is something that I work on with them. So you need to really think about what will you want and need sensory, what supports will you need, and communicating especially boundaries, because one of the things that can become so overwhelming is the visitors, is the inputs, is the insistence, is the advice. And it's not that there's never a place for those things, because I think that there is. I think that everybody needs wisdom, and I know that I like sharing my wisdom about pregnancy and birth with people, but I also want moms to be able to make up their own minds and to have their own space. And so I wait to be invited in. And that may be a boundary that you want to set. And then also, you want to make sure, like I said, sometimes the baby care can be overwhelming because you're trying to juggle that with everything else. So as much as you can, having people who are bringing in food that you know is food that you like and food that you find easy to eat. Having people who are willing to handle the cleaning and just those household day-to-day management tasks, even for the first few weeks, can be really invaluable. So doing the postpartum planning now. If you don't have some of that level of support, then I recommend simplifying as much as possible. And this is something I work with moms a lot on too, is what can we do to set up freezer meals? How can we simplify and streamline household management for those first few weeks so that you know that you'll really be able to handle it? Those are things that are really, really good, again, during pregnancy, to do this preparation so that you're ready for the smoother postpartum. And then two, if you feel comfortable disclosing to any team that's working with you, certainly to your husband or partner, but also if you've got a postpartum doula who's going to come in and help. If you've got any health visitors or workers who are coming in to help, you may want to choose to disclose to them that you're on the spectrum, have an autism diagnosis, because then you can ask them for help, for tips, for supports that may be invaluable to you. Like I said, we already talked a bit about handling a fussy baby, stepping away if you feel upset. I've just got some more notes on a fussy baby. And then again, like if you're feeling overwhelmed, it's okay if you need to set baby down to do some things that are soothing to you, like holding an object or a texture that feels soothing to you, doing some rocking, listening to some music. If you can do those things with your baby, that can be really helpful. I mentioned already my second baby was very fussy, and one of the things that I would do with him was put him in a ring sling and put music on, and I would just dance with him. I can still hear the music that we danced to very often. And then, of course, my toddler at the time, because I had an 18-month-old when he was born, she would just kind of dance around with us as well. And so that was useful for me to help me calm down. And this is good for every mom when you're feeling overwhelmed. But again, know that it's okay to put the baby in a safe place. If you need to take a break or call somebody, that's okay. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. And then also, if you need other people to help take the baby or walk with the baby for a minute because you're really overwhelmed, that's okay. And if you're worried that you're struggling with something like postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety, please reach out right away. Like I said, I'll link to Postpartum International down below. There is a maternal line that is, at least in the United States, is available 24/7. You'll get somebody if you call or text that line. And then Postpartum International runs a warm line where you can call or text and you'll get a response back between normal business hours. And then there are also often support groups that are run by states and other jurisdictions. So if you're worried, definitely reach out, because we need to break the stigma that moms may struggle, just like we need to break the stigma that, neurodiverse moms are not, going to be good moms because what's going on with them. But what we need to do is just, realize that sometimes it can be difficult, and we don't live in societies most of our societies are not super supportive in the postpartum period in the way that we really need to be, which is, that hands-on care to handle all those things so that the mother can just focus on herself and her baby. And so if you're struggling and there's a lot going on, then definitely reach out. And again, I think this postpartum planning, the practical planning that I've talked about, as well as nutrition and that sort of thing, can help. And having that support team on board with the postpartum help, with a lactation consultant or breastfeeding counselor, all of those people can help. So having that support team built up, having those plans and that support system can make a big deal. Again, other things that I've talked about are, being consistent with routines. I definitely recommend doing the chart with the shading in on your baby, because women come to me all the time and they're just shocked, because they're like, I felt like we were feeding around the clock and it was just agonizing and there was no rhyme or reason. And then they realized that there was a pattern. And also remember, again, like I said, around 4 months old, your baby's going to really shift in their routines and patterns. But during that 4th trimester, babies need to nurse more and they need to sleep more, and they'll get cranky more easily. And once you tune into that and starting to understand babies' patterns, it becomes a lot easier. And also, once you realize that your rest cycles may need to adapt to be around the babies for a time, can be helpful. So don't try and get up and do the housework while your baby is sleeping. Ideally, you let somebody else do that, or you've talked with me if you know you're not going to have any other support for, okay, Kristen, how can I absolutely minimize this during pregnancy so that I don't have to do as much when my baby is little? So yeah, just remember those things. And then, you have a lot of strengths because you're probably a researcher. Your baby's probably going to become one of your special interests. Mothering may become one of your special interests. So you're going to be researching, looking into things. Your baby is very blessed. You've got a nervous system that is well primed to be soothed by the same thing as your baby. So you're able to really relax and just be calm and have that connection with your baby. You know a lot about the importance of intentional mothering, breastfeeding, and those sorts of things. And all of that is of great advantage to your baby. So your child just has so much to benefit from having you as a unique mom. And as we'll touch on in next week's episode, there's a good chance that if you're neurodivergent, your child will be too. And they are definitely at an advantage to have a parent who understands that and can communicate with them on a deeper level. So with that, I will look forward to talking with you more next week. Have a blessed week this week, and let me know any questions that come up, or if you want to chat, I will have the link below, or reach out to me at birthbabylife.com/beautiful. Take care.